Welcome to Music Forever, a podcast by the New Horizons International Music Association. I am Irene Cohen. Shelley Hazen is the new administrative assistant for NHIMA since May 2025. She was raised in a musical home where her father played jazz piano and her mother supported all of her musical interests, including making costumes for performances. Music was a constant presence in her life, with frequent jam sessions and a household filled with music at all hours. She began playing the flute in high school and has remained connected to music ever since. That passion carried into her family life as well, where she encouraged and supported her two sons, both of whom became skilled piano players. Shelley is an active member of the New Horizons band at the Don Wright Faculty of Music at the Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. She began in the intermediate band playing flute and has progressed to the advanced band. And recently she started learning the alto saxophone and currently plays in the intermediate band. The saxophone has become a new and exciting part of her musical journey. Shelley also brings a strong background in administration and organization with experience that includes working at an arts-based school. In her spare time, Shelley also teaches yoga, golfs, and plays pickleball. This interview was done in August 2025 in London, Ontario. Well, hello, Shelley. How are you?
I'm great, Irene. Thank you so much for having me here today.
We're sitting here in the backyard surrounded by beautiful flowers and trees and birds. We're in London, Ontario, and Shelley has joined the New Horizons International team by becoming our brand new administrative assistant after Amy Kneip retired after about 5 years of doing a tremendous job. And it's a real honor that you also happen to be in my band, which, who knew? Who knew this was going to happen? So how did music get in your life?
I was born into music, for sure. My father was an incredible jazz piano player, and music was just always there. It was like our air, it was like our oxygen, and I wouldn't even notice that it was there. When I turned 19 and I moved out of the house, I moved into my own apartment and I was very lonely, and I phoned my mom and I was chatting away and I could hear my dad playing piano in the background and the dog barking. And I said, I need somebody to put that on a recorder. I need to be able to have that in my apartment. And my dad said, well, I'll throw it on, but the phone rings and the dog barks. And I said, exactly, that's what I need. I need to hear that. So music was always there. My initial starting to play instruments was probably when I was about 9 or 10 years old. My dad, of course, being a piano player, piano was the instrument that was in our home. So I started playing the piano, and I did that for a few years. Not well. I was a child. I learned to read music, which was a foundation that I'm forever grateful for because it made everything I did later in my life that much easier. But my dad thought that if you played piano, all you did was play piano. And so quickly it became a little bit of an argument in our home because I wasn't practicing as much as he thought I should. He wasn't my teacher. We knew that wouldn't work. And so after a few years, I thought, well, the best way not to have this be a thing between us is for me just not to play. So I stopped. But music was always there. We had jam sessions and craziness in our home. And then later on, fast forward a few years, my dad had a phenomenal flute player in his group that I just loved. His name was Sam Ogilvie, if anybody knows that name. And he agreed to give me flute lessons my summer between going into grade 6 and grade 7. Actually, I guess it was a little bit later than that. It was probably high school. So I took flute lessons, and when I landed in high school, I immediately joined the band and played the flute. And that was kind of my kickoff to really my own journey through music. I played all through grade 9 through grade 12. And then didn't play in college and pretty much set it down at that point and really didn't do much of anything. A couple of times through my adult life, I would maybe live somewhere and there was a band and I would go out, but then kids got in the way in life and marriage and all of those things. And then I was very busy giving my musical time to my two sons, who are both phenomenal musicians in their own right, and both very, very amazing piano players, not unlike my father. So it was very important to me that they have the same exposure that I had, because I wasn't the musician. So I wasn't going to be having music in my home the same way. So my kids were very exposed to my father. I was fortunate enough to live in London while my kids were growing up. So they were over there all of the time. So they heard music. They had lots of musical conversations. And I did everything I could to expose them to as many different forms of music so that they would then pick their own path and enjoy the parts of music that spoke to them. My oldest son plays in a couple of up-and-coming Canadian country bands. He's doing very well, but he plays like my father. If I closed my eyes, he would be playing the jazz piano just like my dad does. And then my youngest son has a very different path, because raising two piano players in the same home was challenging sometimes, and he ended up going on into musical theater direction. So very, very different, both very accomplished in their own right, and makes it very interesting. There was a very big joke. Both of my kids went to high school, and they would have music nights, and I always said, can you guys please just play a duet together, because you never play together. And so, much to my joy and surprise, at one of the school concerts, and they're close to the end of their time at high school, they came out and they sat down together at the piano and they played a duet. And then when they were done, they turned and they looked straight at me and they said, "Are you happy, Mom?" And I said, "You have no idea how happy I am."
Did your mom play any music or had any music interests?
My mom couldn't have carried a tune in a bucket if you paid her. She was the cheerleader. She was the best musician wife on the planet. She supported everything my dad did. She supported all of us. She made costumes. She helped my dad get to and from things, and made sure that everything was amazing at home so that we could all go out and do our thing. And my dad was a phenomenal piano player, and so she was very, very supportive.
Can you reflect on how kids who grow up in musical households versus maybe not musical households, what sort of a difference that would make?
I think, for me personally, having grown up in a musical household was just always there. My father would come home from work at lunchtime and play the piano, and we would realize he'd gone back to work because suddenly it would be quiet and we could hear the TV again, and he would play concerts. And my dad was sneaking us into bars and jazz clubs and going to Toronto and doing all kinds of things at 9 and 10 and 11 years old that it was very normal for us. It's just what we did. We went everywhere. And so we were exposed to people and music and incredible opportunities. I realized how special that was, because even kids who grow up with a musical family, they maybe don't have those kinds of opportunities. At the time, London was very alive with live music in all of the bars and restaurants everywhere. Not like today, where you have to search hard to find live music if you want to go out for dinner somewhere. The big thing was, at the end of the night, on a Saturday night, all of the musicians poured into our home. So we would have every Saturday night for years and years, just musicians everywhere. And my mother would order Chinese food at 2 a.m. and feed everybody. And we were frequently visited by the police, who I'm sure thought they were getting some big bust, and they'd come in and find my mother making butter tarts and musicians sitting around the kitchen table drinking milk. So it was very unique. I think kids that don't have music in their life when they're growing up are very fortunate when someone somewhere exposes them to it, whether it be in school or a family friend, or they're just listening to the radio and they start realizing how much they love music, and they're maybe gifted a guitar or something. And so then they get to follow that journey just in a different way. And ultimately we can all get there, and we just have different paths. My father used to say, playing the piano is a very lonely instrument. It's not a concert band instrument like what we have at New Horizons programs. And so you're taking a child from playing in the backyard or doing something with their friends and saying, hey, it's time to come in and practice. And they don't want to do that. And so my dad always said, just make them play for a little bit and sit with them. So I would go and I would sit in my rocking chair and I would say, come and play. You only have to practice for 5 minutes. And you can start by playing me your favorite song. So it wasn't so bad. They didn't have to come in and play a scale or something that, kids don't want to do. So they would come in, and I was very fortunate because my kids did and do still love to play piano. And so all I had to do was get them there. And once I got them there, I had the opposite problem. I usually had the other one saying, hey, it's my time. Kick them out. I'm ready to play now. And so I was very lucky. And then when my kids went to school, other parents would call me because my kids were on to me by the time they, got into later years in school. They were very blessed to go to Lester B. Pearson School for the Arts. So I was very involved as a parent volunteer in the school. And I would have parents call me and say, what's this 5-minute practice? Children have to practice the piano for an hour. And I used to laugh. I said, oh, trust me, they do. But I just have to get them there. And then I actually have to stop them long past the hour because they will just play forever if I don't stop them because they love it so much. So I had a very different, very unique approach to it. I would sit with them and then I would go in the room and I would, go in and out and pop in and say, hey, that sounds great. Play me something else. And if I didn't feel it had been long enough or I knew they were getting ready maybe to play in the Kiwanis Festival or something, I would say, hey, play me that piece again. So yeah, a little different approach.
Do your sons reflect on that life experience?
They do. They tease me often about 5 minutes. And now that I'm learning to play a new instrument, and I've gone back to learning to play the piano. So I didn't play all of those years. And then sadly, after my father passed, at 90 years old, in a jam session at the piano, doing what he loved. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. At 90, he'd played his last concert at the Wolf Performance Hall in London at 90. And then about 6 months after that is when he passed. But fond memories of all of those things.
What is your father's name?
Grant Graham.
Grant Graham was the founder of Jazz for the People, which is a very popular program co-sponsored by the Friends of the London Public Library in Ontario, Canada. This free jazz concert series at the Wolf Performance Hall features local musicians and visiting guest musicians playing a wide range of jazz genres. In fact, several of our local New Horizons groups play for Jazz for the People at the Wolf Performance Hall in London, Ontario on a regular basis.
So my father had a beautiful concert 7-foot-7 grand piano in his home, one of only a few in London at that time. And one of my sons wanted to purchase the piano from the estate, but he had their piano from when my kids were young that I had bought for them. And so we were in the process of negotiating how all of this was going to happen, and I had a very emotional reaction and said, I think I want the piano that was my kid's piano. And I knew I didn't want my dad's because it didn't play the piano. That would be pretty ridiculous. And so my husband would come home every day and I had painter's tape outlining a piano on the floor. And he walked in one day and he said, is this a piano crime scene? I said, no, I think I want the piano. And he looked at me like I was insane. And every day he would come home and I would have the painter's tape moved somewhere else in the room. And then one day he came home and the tape was gone. And he said, have you given up this crazy idea? And I said, I've given up the idea of putting it here. We're going to put an addition on our house for a piano. And we did. As insane as that seems, we did. And then I started taking piano lessons, and I've been taking them ever since. So I've been taking piano for almost 9 years. And in the last year or two, I actually start to feel like maybe I'm a piano player.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful, actually. And I just wish I'd done it while he was still here to know, but yeah. I like to think he does know.
Yeah. Shelley tells her story how she ended up joining the New Horizons band in London, Ontario.
I joined the band in 2013, the first time. Not unlike many people, we have these massive gaps in between our musical journey. And I played for a few years, and I joined on the intermediate band on the flute, because that was, of course, my instrument at the time. And I had a great time with it. And then fast forward, pandemic, stopped playing for a while. I didn't come back initially. And then when I did come back this past September, I was speaking with a friend who said they were not going back to the intermediate or the advanced, that they were going to go to the beginner band and start fresh on a new instrument. And I jokingly said, I've always wanted to play the alto sax. I think I might do that. So I rented an alto sax because I didn't know anything about it. I literally had not even opened the case. Got to my first day last September, opened it and said, how do I put it together? We have the benefit of Western's music students as our instrumental teachers. So I started with her and she showed me how to put it together. And I said, great, how do I make sound? And then my next question after that was, how do I learn the fingering? And then someone said, well, don't you play the flute? I said, yes. They said, it's the same. I had done no research, nothing at all, which is very unlike me because I like to be organized. I like to be prepared, but this was completely a heartfelt decision. And so imagine how happy I was when I found out all I really needed to do was figure out how to make sound. So fast forward, today I did my first solo in our end of season concert. So
That was pretty amazing. I gave you a standing ovation. So, Shelley, at some point, you decided to apply for the job that came up for the administrative assistant for NHIMA because Amy Kneipp, after 5 years, decided to retire after doing an excellent job. So tell us a little bit how you got involved with that.
I decided to do something I'd never done before, which was go to a one-day band camp, I guess for lack of a better way of describing it, in Burlington. And I went to the camp and I signed up and I had an amazing experience. I really didn't know what I was getting into, and it was really phenomenal. 3 different conductors, lots of sight reading and music, and kind of challenging myself musically and putting myself into an environment that I hadn't done before. And then you actually got up and talked about the Mont Tremblant camp. And I'd heard from other New Horizons people in our own band about the camp and how amazing it was, but I didn't know anything about it. But I had already decided that I was going to go and try to get into the camp for coming October. Then you made reference to the fact that being a member was important because members of NHIMA get to have an advanced opportunity. And so I went home, and the next day I got online and I immediately renewed my membership. So I was scrolling around on the website after I joined. I thought I should take a look and just see what's being offered and what things there are to do, and scroll to the bottom and I see that they're looking for an administrative assistant. And I read the description, and it was the last day to apply. And the next day I got a response and an offer for an interview, and I had the interview. So I was chosen for the job, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's exceeded my expectations or thoughts even to what the job would be, and just bringing me so much joy in being involved in such an incredible organization. The main areas of it administratively, dealing with emails and things that come in from the membership and just people inquiring about membership, dealing with emails coming in from the nearly 200 New Horizons bands that we have across the world, really, because there's places in Australia. Lots of information and questions about different bands, ways to join bands, helping bands renew their own membership. Another big part of it is our virtual events. So if people aren't sure what a virtual event is, it's really worth going to the website and taking a look, because we're coming into fall now and we're starting to gear up. There's ukulele classes, there's some guitar master workshop classes, there's swinging with the blues class, there's all kinds of things. And I have taken a ukulele course in the past, actually, and really enjoyed it. It's a very inexpensive opportunity to have a lesson in something or just expand your knowledge in an area that you maybe have a little interest. And the benefit is you can sign up and you take the class at the designated time. But if you're working or you happen to miss it because you're doing something, for 2 weeks, the videos are available for people who've signed up for the class to participate and review it later on. So you don't miss it. And that's a big part of my job, because the backside of that is creating those links, creating the emails that go out and getting all of that information put together, trying to make it as easy and user-friendly as possible for people to be able to take the classes. The other thing that's probably the other next biggest thing that I do is camps. Camps are big. So we're doing a lot of different things with registration, helping people get organized. And then on my side of it, I receive all of the music that everyone's going to play. I break it out into all of the different instrumental parts, trumpets, trombones, saxophones, etc. I guess I feel like I'm a little part in the journey for helping people do something that they love and that they're passionate about. So that makes me feel good.
Well, as we know, an organization can only run well when that support system is strong and in place. And in Amy and you, we have found 2 people who are very passionate about being that support. So thank you so much for doing all that work, Shelley. It's been only, 4 or 5 months now into the job, and it feels like you've been here much longer than that. Very involved work, something that everybody should be really, really thankful for. And now that you're getting more understanding of what the international organization offers, and you talked about the programming, that was probably not something you were completely aware of before.
No, not to the extent. It was around the pandemic. I think I received an email from our own New Horizons band, as many people did from probably their own bands as well, now we're all at home, and what are we going to do with ourselves? And so NHIMA became even more important, I think, to people than maybe it had been prior to that. And that was my first sort of experience with it, I guess, and seeing there's things to do. But like everyone, probably the pandemic was over and we got back out into the real world, and now we were doing music live. And I didn't think so much about, do I want to do something virtually, because I was, doing it live and in person in real time. But I think one of the incredible important aspects about it is the virtual side of it. I think is so important because lots of people maybe aren't going out into a band every day. And maybe some people are still at home, either because they're just not able to get out, or perhaps they're aging, but still really want that community aspect. And the nice thing about the classes are that, you're there, you're with other people, and you're doing something. And I think that's a wonderful thing in music. It speaks to people, it speaks to their hearts, and I think it creates so much joy. So I think more than ever, we know that as we age, especially, those little interactions, sometimes they say those are more important even than the people you're living with right inside of your own home. The conductors and the musicians that are leading the programs are well experienced in so many different areas. Mm-hmm. And so I think more than ever, if you let your membership lapse like I did, renew it, get on board, because I often see people sign up to take a class and they pay the non-member rate. And I think, why? Mm-hmm. Join the member rate, because it's the same experience and same cost. And then you can participate in anything that you want to do. Yeah. And the more you do, I don't know, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, it is really forming a community, a safe community where everybody is welcome. And as you say, we're trying to make it as comfortable as possible and as easy as possible for everyone to be part of it. And you are right. I mean, we're very familiar with those people who are coming to our live camps, but the far majority of people never come to one of our live camps for all the reasons one can think of. We have to think of ways of being that community in between camps. And I think that our online programming, thank goodness for the pandemic from that point of view,
yes,
where we developed all that, becomes so important. And we do have groupies who come to just about every class online. Yeah, and it is always a joy to see them. If you were to meet somebody who says, wow, I hear you play saxophone or whatever it is you do these days in terms of your musical experiences, I've always thought it would be fun to learn an instrument, or I would love to pick up my clarinet again. What would you tell them?
Do it. Don't think twice. Just go rent an instrument if you need to. I had to rent an instrument the first time because my high school flute, when I pulled it out, didn't work. It was like, oh dear, it's been in the case too long. And I guess it maybe didn't work when I put it away the last time. So, it's very inexpensive to rent an instrument. You can do that for $35 or $40 a month. It's not a lot of money. You don't have to invest. And then go and, hopefully you live near where you can participate in person in a band. But if you don't, you can seek out something locally. It doesn't have to be New Horizons if that doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, but other people who would like to, then contact us and we'll help you get started with a new band in your area. We're always looking to expand that for other people, expand our horizons literally, so that people can have the opportunity to participate. But I just think you get to a point in your life where don't let the fear of maybe not being able to succeed or not being able to understand. Look at me. I didn't even know how to put the instrument together when I started. And I just boldly went forward. And I'm in this job because I made a decision, quite unlike me, to go off to another city and participate in a day camp. And I was the only person that I knew when I walked in that door. But they made me feel so welcome. And I would actually secretly love to see us do more one-day things, because I think not everybody can take a week out of their life, either because they can't get there or they just have too many obligations in their life. And so I'm quite in favor of the 1 or 2 day opportunities as well. And more things that we can do as an association to encourage people and help them along the way. And I think, the beginner online classes for sure are beneficial. So
yes,
and just do it.
Yeah, the 1 day things don't have to be complicated, and they are work for the people who organize it.
For sure.
But again, we have had people reach out to NHIMA to say, so how do you do something like this? And what would you suggest about this, that, or the other?
When you're passionate about something, you just want everybody else to do it. It's like you see a good movie, you want to tell everybody, go and see that movie. And this is how I feel about music, because I'm so passionate about doing it. The thing that I love about New Horizons bands is that as I'm, proof of, you don't really have to know anything. You can just come, and it's a warm, supportive environment. And even if you're starting to read music and it's new to you and you can't play every note, one of our band conductors, we were talking and they said, what percentage of notes do you think you need to play correctly? And there was a very large pause that day because you could see the people in band were looking around going, is this a trick question? So I kind of raised my hand and said, 100%? And they said, yes! You don't have to play 100% of the notes, but the ones you do play need to be correct. And so maybe you're playing the first note of every bar because you can't play triplets yet or whatever, but because you're not alone. So you sort of grow and you build confidence, and then you keep going, and it just gets better and easier and more fun, and you learn to laugh at yourself a lot.
Shelley, thank you so much for giving this interview, but also for everything you do for New Horizons International. You hit the rubber running, so to speak, when you took on this job, and it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and working with you. I can't wait making a lot of noise with you in Mont-Tremblant in October. If you think one-day camp is great, wait until you do a 5-day camp.
I just can't wait, and I want to thank you for having me here today to do this, and also for the incredible support that you've been to me since I took on the role. So
you're so welcome. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Shelley described how her father, Grant Graham, left his legacy and how it is continuing on in her sons. But we have to mention one more person. Shelley's 9-year-old granddaughter, Billy, who was named Billy after Bill Evans, the jazz pianist, has been playing piano for 3 years now. And she was asking her grandma, "Did you mention me in the podcast?" Well, Billy, I am doing that now. And if you keep practicing that piano, one day you will be interviewed as well. I would like to thank Shelley Hazen for doing this interview. If you would like to find out more about Shelley's New Horizons band in London, Ontario, please go to music.uwo.ca, find the Outreach tab, and click on New Horizons Band. Music for this podcast by Mary Riddle, Swag On. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Music Forever. If you are interested to be interviewed for this podcast, please email us at NHIMA@gmail.com. That is NHIMA podcast@gmail.com. See you next time.